Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is, wherever you are, welcome. I am so glad you're here. Welcome to the AI Empowered Fundraiser show. It's now a show, people. I'm Ann Murphy, and my business partner and husband, Don Wackerly, is co-hosting with me. He's in the comments to answer questions and let me know of technical difficulties. Oftentimes there's like a lag. I wanted to say hi to people who are here on LinkedIn live, as well as folks who are on YouTube. And I gather that this is also being streamed somewhere on Facebook. Not sure. But welcome everybody. And if you're watching the replay, welcome as well. And if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to me later. If you don't, you know what I mean, if you're watching later and don't have time to check in real time, I do invite everyone who's here to do this little thing, this little exercise, right? So put your hands in the air, stretch your neck out if you need to, shoulders, hands in the air, make sure all 5 fingers are working and that the opposable thumbs are working especially well. And if you're on your computer, if you're sitting at your desk, this keyboard thing, tippy tappy. I am really hoping that you will engage with me today, in part because, and if you're on your phone, thumbs, beep, bop, boop. Because guess what? Our guest is in the hospital. So we are going to barrel on ahead with a few thoughts and ideas that I've been wanting to share about AI governance and stakeholder trust in the nonprofit sector. But I really am just craving interaction from you all to let me know sort of what's on your mind when it comes to AI governance. Do we even know what that means? Do we even know what AI governance is? And before I barrel ahead, I'm going to just check on LinkedIn to make sure we're live. I love to do that because, sometimes, I don't know, sometimes I just don't. Here we go. I'm live. What AI governance is. There we go. There's 6 of you here. Wonderful. Delighted. There's 6 of you here on LinkedIn. Still don't know how to find out who's there on YouTube. We're just building in public, people. So welcome. So we're going to talk about AI governance in the nonprofit sector today. Thank you, Trisha. And good, Donnie checked them all. So I'm just going to start in the beginning. Like, what does AI governance even mean? And why has it become so important for us to talk about? We started with our AI upskilling program, teaching fundraisers and other nonprofit leaders, one person at a time, how to use AI tools themselves. We talk about responsible AI, how to not upload, private information into the large language models, why it's important not to do that. We talk about ethics and transparency and explainability. We talk about continuous learning. We talk about how we, work on our own biases so that we're better at identifying bias in the large language model output. But we really were spending most of our time teaching people how to use the models. And what I realized after training over 2,000 people, so that was like 300 or 400 people ago, was that it's so important that everybody has, even if it's just your own individual AI governance framework, a set of rules or guidelines or guardrails that you subscribe to, because AI safety and the relationship with stakeholder trust is all of our problems, right? It's up to all of us. Even if our enterprise has rules, there are going to be all sorts of opportunities for us to maybe inadvertently or maybe intentionally like skirt those rules because we've got shit to do. You know what I mean? So we shifted to a model now where when we're working with clients and we're hired to do upskilling, we have a governance section that is required before we teach anybody, even more about how to use the tools. And if they want AI solutions, we require hearty training in AI governance first. And we work with organizations to build those frameworks that work for their organizations, that deal with some, significant pillars. So that's why we moved to a model where AI governance is front and center in the work that we do. So we're here every Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific, talking with experts in governance. And today you're stuck with me. And then on Fridays, of course, we do hands-on training. So tomorrow, which is April 26th, tomorrow is using generative AI in event planning. So we're going to look at all of the ways that you can work with large language models to make event planning not only faster, because faster is the first thing that people often think about with AI. It's about the quality and it's about the people, process, culture. So when it comes to event planning, one of the things that we're trying to solve for is not only that our plans optimize donor engagement in the nonprofit sector for the philanthropic component, but that internally on our team, we have a cohesive experience where at the end of it, we have not taken any chips out of the goodwill bank, where everybody is still excited to be collaborating with one another, where everybody gets to work in their zone of genius, things move forward more smoothly, we are working toward the same goal. We're using AI tools really on people, process, and cultures more, like it's more important than the technology. So that's what we're doing tomorrow, AI and event planning. On Saturday, we have a weekly event. It's at noon Pacific. It's called Weekend GPT Jams. And this weekend, we're doing a bring your own AI project, basically show and tell and teach us how you did it. It doesn't need to be big. It doesn't need to be epic. Like anything that you're doing that's working really well, because most of us learn best through use cases. So to recap what we have, every Thursday at 11 on LinkedIn Live, 11 Pacific, is AI governance. Every Friday is hands-on teaching, again, 11 a.m. Pacific on LinkedIn Live. Saturdays are weekend GPT jams. We get together. Sometimes it's 50 of us, sometimes it's 10 of us. We do tech platforms. We do AI consultancy, knowledge swaps. We do how to use AI visuals in business development with your integrity intact. It's just, we have access to the most phenomenal peer mentors. And so they're there with us every Saturday. A couple of other things we have coming up, and then I'm going to keep talking about governance. Tomorrow we have a training at 9 a.m. Pacific, AI for consultants. So I'm going to use use cases that if you're out there and you are even thinking about being a consultant in the AI space, or you're currently a consultant in some other space and you want to AIify your work to really, really, really punch above your weight. Like for us, there's 3 of us, but we do the work of 10 of us. It's incredible. And I'm going to be teaching some of those tips and tricks tomorrow. With that, on May 3rd, we have a She Leads AI networking event. She Leads AI is our initiative to bring women thought leaders in AI together, lift one another up, grow together, and build an inclusive AI space, shaping the future through inclusive innovation. We're making this up as we go, people. And after that, so that's on the 3rd of May. And on the 4th of May, we'll have another like inner circle knowledge swap between consultants or emerging consultants. And then there's whole bunches of other stuff. You guys know that I do tons and tons and tons of this. And Donnie will drop in the chat a link where you can register for all of our events and find long form trainings that I've recorded along with the decks, along with prompts. If I've given you guys prompts, you'll find, a way to get a hold of me. If you want to talk about team trainings or one-on-one coaching for AI stuff. What else is in that link? There's a lot of good stuff in that link. So he's going to add that. Let me see the chat. Okay. So thank you, Donnie. Let me kind of dive into AI governance through the lens of the framework toward responsible AI in fundraising. The framework toward responsible AI in fundraising. This is an AI governance framework that was launched last year through about 90 of us working together to come up with some parameters. It's really right now particularly useful for our relationships with vendors. So, what are the things that we want to be asking them? What are the commitments that we want them to agree to? Kind of like a preferred partnership where they vetted us and we vetted them because we all subscribe to the framework for responsible AI and fundraising. So, Donnie, can you drop that link to fundraising AI? And we'll be talking more about this at the summit that we have that's planned for October, I want to say maybe 3rd. And this will be a group of about 10,000 nonprofit leaders. It's virtual, sponsored by some really fantastic partners so that it's free for everybody. So I'm going to actually look at, you know what? I might just drop that in myself, Donnie. He might be multitasking. We have, planes, trains, automobiles, dogs. And thank you everybody for bearing with me with a little bit of a slow start. We're just, we're just making shit up as we go. JK, we're not, that's not what we're doing. We're not making it up as we go, but maybe a little bit. So let me do a screen share. I'm just going to show you, I'm going to talk a little bit about each of these things that are issues with our fundraising. So when we are working with, let me change this to, no, that's not good. Is that good? It's fine for now. Okay. So when we are implementing AI into our business operations, there are a number of critical concerns that are on most people's minds. Like there are a few questions that your donors, your board members, your constituents are always going to ask if they are like in the AI world and they're paying attention to what's going on. There are a few things that they're going to hit right off the bat. They're going to ask you about privacy and security of their data. So what becomes very important is that we have good data governance. So we talked about this yesterday at a webinar for the Association of Advancement Services Professionals. Talked about AI and data and like what's at risk when you have low quality data. And so I'll just say on that it's really important that we begin, our foundation is having high quality, clean data that again is coming from a vendor that subscribes to, that has endorsed the framework toward responsible AI and fundraising. Really important because it is garbage in, garbage out. And the models like ChatGPT have been trained on 40 years of the public internet. And as we know, there's a ton of garbage out there. And so we are inherently going to be working with data that is very flawed. Our goal is to minimize those flaws, to be able to explain to our constituents, what we're doing to minimize those flaws and ensure that we're protecting stakeholder trust. So I'll give you an anecdote. The other month, about a month ago, I was back east doing a talk at a conference, upskilling a whole group of a large group of women, probably like, there's like 100 of us, doing upskilling on AI and fundraising. And it was so thrilling, so energizing. Super exciting because AI is a women's game. Everybody knows that now, I think. And women are crushing it. absolutely crushing it. So I'm so psyched to see that. But one of the things we were talking about in the realm of data privacy and security is how we move donor information around throughout our organizations. So a perfect example is, what do we do with donor briefings? Okay. Now that we're all using generative AI for research and meeting prep and donor strategies, there's a lot of opportunity to inadvertently release private information out into the world. When we put that information in, there's what we're protecting against is that their information, the donor's information, would go out into the world, into the public internet, and the next model, or when like ChatGPT does an update, that donor's information would be used for training purposes. So then it's no longer private. So the conversation we had was, all right, so if we're trying not to do that, we're doing everything to ensure that private information about our donors doesn't go off into the world. Does that mean, this is what I was asked, was, does that mean that we should not be emailing donor information to each other as attachments? And this is where I really love the role that AI governance plays in operational excellence. So this gives us the opportunity to break what's already broken. I always talk about this. Generative AI and inserting intelligent AI solutions into our business operations gives us a chance to take a big step back and go, okay, so we never, we never should have been doing it that way anyway. We've been doing it. It's been working fine, right? There hasn't been any disasters yet, but certainly there's an element of risk that we would like to remove from, our daily business operations. So now we're going to quash not only, right, the AI component of lack of privacy, but the just emailing, right? Why are we emailing donor information around? Why are people emailing contact reports to each other or attaching briefings with, like, maybe if you're at least using a link to a cloud, that's one thing. So this is an opportunity to break what's already broken to protect our donors' data security and privacy. First and foremost, like AI governance level 1 is data security and privacy. So that's what I wanted to say about that part. Let's see what Fundraising AI says. Yes. So these principles should be part of all phases of an AI system lifecycle, including consent, control over the use of data, ability to restrict how data is used, the right to notification, right to erasure, and adherence to privacy laws. So those are pretty high bars, right? Like this is, you're sitting at your computer machine and you all by yourself are responsible. Doesn't matter what your enterprise, framework is. Each and every one of us has the responsibility of making sure that that we protect the privacy of our donors. Okay, that's probably way more than enough on that. Um, I am going to skip down because I want to talk about transparency and explainability at this point, because I think that's can people see this? You definitely can't see it if you're on your phone. Let me see what happens here. Ooh, how about that? Is that better? So transparency and explainability, I think that this is number 2 for us. And I want to paint a scenario. For those of you who are here and you're in higher education, and by the way, again, I want to remind everybody, please drop questions, comments, observations. If you have a burning question about like how we should be controlling our usage of AI, drop it in the comments and I will definitely address it. And then the other thing I'm going to do here is, how do I do this? I'm going to, hold on one second. We're talking about explainability and transparency right now. Okay, I'm going to show that. Let's see what happens. Yes, explainability. Did I spell that right? Okay, right now we're talking about explainability and transparency in responsible AI. So here's the scenario. In September or maybe late August, higher ed fundraisers will start showing up at football games and bebopping around, hanging out in the parking lots, hanging out in the suites, you know, entertaining donors, spending time with administrators, spending time with board members, committee members, etc. What are people going to ask you about? Everyone is going to be talking about AI. We're going to be in the middle of a crazy election cycle, and there's going to be a lot of crazy stuff going on. It is going to be on people's minds, right? And it's kind of one of those topics, sort of like, what do you want to avoid at Thanksgiving dinner with like your crazy, drunk uncle? But it's also absolutely imperative that we talk about it, and we are going into it knowing, just like that weird Thanksgiving conversation, that there could be a lot of energy around this, right? AI brings up hopes, dreams, fears, right? Lots of us were raised, we look at like the Terminator in Hollywood. We look at like all these, I heard somebody call it the parade of horribles. Lots of us have that parade of horribles in mind. Of course, in my case, I also have like all the beautiful things about AI and how it's changing our lives for the better. But our donors and our board members and our faculty, et cetera, are going to ask us, how are you all working with data? What are you doing with AI? And we need to be able to explain why we're doing what we're doing and why we're doing it and how we're doing it. So each and every one of us is out here on these streets needing to have conversations with important stakeholders about what we're doing. And it's really important that we all are able to do that. I don't care who you are, where you are in the organizational structure, these conversations are going to come up. So we need to be able to explain. We also have to be willing to explain. So that transparency component is so important and requires us to be comfortable with a level of vulnerability that hasn't been required of us in the past. Like, this is a whole brave new world where everything about AI is existential and face melting, and it's moving so fast, and there's so much drama, and some people think it's overhyped and some people think it's underhyped. There's just a lot going on. But so for us to be able to say in full transparency, here's how it's going, requires a level of comfort with vulnerability that hasn't really been asked of many of us before. So that's another reason why it's really important that we are all working toward frameworks for AI governance, so that we know what are we doing and how are we talking about it. I'm a huge advocate for having a communication plan, so that nobody is out here struggling to figure out what is our AI governance structure. They're like, oh, I know what it is. This is what we do. Oh, sorry about that. Got distracted. ADHD moment. So we can all communicate clearly and in keeping with our organizational guardrails. Okay, that's transparency and explainability. So we've covered privacy and security, which is a top concern for me. Transparency and explainability, it follows right on that. Okay. My next favorite one is it ethics? I want to get to the one that talks to us about bias. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so let's talk about bias in our, inclusiveness Okay. Now everybody will know what we're talking about. Look at all this multitasking. So let's talk about, sorry, let's talk about inclusiveness and bias in AI governance. And I'll share with you what I've learned. One is that the bias that exists that comes through our large language models requires us to admit to ourselves what we've all been pouring out into the internet for the last 40 years. When you put in a prompt and ask for a female CEO and you get back a white woman and you never specified white, it's because of all the information that we humans have put out there onto the internet. When we say, send me an image of 4 college age engineers working in a lab, and it sends you back 4 guys, this actually should not be a surprise. We shouldn't be all like, pearl clutching because, of course, right? That's the imagery that's out there in the world. That's the narrative that's out there in the world. And those models are trained on the stuff that we've already put in there. So it's really important to have an open mind about where this comes from and not think that the models are evil or the models don't do a good job. And what we've seen now, in fact, is that we have had a tendency to overcorrect for bias. And was it Google Gemini? I think it was Google Gemini when they launched, they got into a whole heap of trouble because their model did overcorrect for bias. And it's like people were asking for images of like the presidents on Mount Rushmore or something, and it delivered imagery of Black people, which we know is just not reality. So we have to be careful about overcorrection as well. But what this requires of all of us, which I have really found to be interesting, is that we search our own souls about our own internal bias and that we sharpen up our understanding of what out there actually does demonstrate bias, what can be hurtful, what can be unethical, what can erode stakeholder trust. I've had the opportunity to fine tune my understanding of my own bias and also my own ignorance a couple of times. And an example is I was working with a friend of mine who is a real estate agent, and she just kind of had hit a wall on how she talks about her different listings. And so I was working through it with her, and one of the outputs from ChatGPT said, um, the house is a 7-minute walk to the grade school or something like that. Well, here's the thing, and I wouldn't have caught this, but this has been something that they cover in the real estate industry. Not everybody walks to school. Some people use a wheelchair, right? And so by us saying it's a this, that, and the other walk, that's an example of our own bias and how that comes out in reality. And actually, there's like some laws around that, I gather. But certainly there's some just integrity involved with not being ableist, right? So we don't want to do that. So I've had lots of opportunities to fine tune my own bias. I'll say that, we talk about human in the loop, right? Human in the loop means that every time you're working with, these AI models, you are always, we're not sending anything off into the world that we haven't worked on ourselves, right? You're going back and you're looking at it and you're editing it and you're making it yours and you're making it better. I talk about the expert in the loop. So if you are working on a project that's in your zone of genius, in your subject matter expertise, you are much more qualified to identify bias, right? Let's say I start talking about invisible cloaks. I do not know anything about like the physics of invisible cloaks, like the history of them. Like there's going to be words I don't understand. There's going to be, I don't know, all kinds of stuff like maybe like characters from stories. There's going to be, I don't know, stuff I don't know about invisible cloaks. So I would have a harder time identifying bias in that output. I can begin cross-referencing things, absolutely. But I'm here to say, if you're in your zone of expertise, you are more qualified to be able to identify that bias. So what do we say here about inclusiveness? Non-discrimination and prevention of bias, representative and high-quality data. So an example of representative and high-quality data is, who are we collecting the data from? Is it a diverse and inclusive data set? It may not be, right? Let's say we're sending surveys out and certain people, certain demographics are self-selecting to participate in the survey. That means that our data is inherently going to be biased, right? Because it doesn't represent the entire, breadth of our constituency. Equality, inclusiveness in impact, and inclusiveness in design. All right, so we've talked about privacy and security, transparency and explainability, inclusiveness. And I'm going to pick two more things to talk about. Which ones do I want to get into? Yes, there's that. Yes, there's that. Accountability is a tricky one. Let me just say a tiny bit about accountability, because I think this is a perfect example of how we need to embrace that AI governance, all these things that we've already talked about is up to each and every one of us. So we're approaching this brave new world with our own level of accountability to our stakeholders, accountability to our colleagues, accountability to ourselves. And I always say, like, I like to sleep well at night. So I don't want to take on a whole bunch of risk. I don't want to do anything that would, put my stakeholders' trust at risk. And so I definitely modify how I'm going to use them, or like fine tune how I'm going to use AI based on that. And for those of you who've been to my sessions before, I always ask everybody when I'm training on Fridays to put into the chat, I will not put confidential information into ChatGPT. So all the people I've trained, the conferences, blah, 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 everybody makes a pledge. We will not put confidential information into ChatGPT, and that goes for any other large language model. But accountability is tricky because there are going to be times where we're using the models and trusting that certain things have already taken place, right? That the data and the process is replicable, right? Do we know exactly what we're doing? Or are things happening like as one-offs? What are our business operations? Are we fine tuning over time? Like, do we know where to look to show what we did? And is it fixable? Right? Is it fixable? If there's a problem, can we go in and fix it? And I'll share with you that, like, one of the examples of this in our work is that if we're working with an AI automation, there's a moment where that project, that prompt, that input, and then what happens with the input that gets to the output, there's a moment where that goes, like, it becomes invisible to us. We don't see what's happening. We may have set up the workflow and set up the prompts and automations, but we're not seeing how the model and that information is interacting that very day. So one solution is to be the kind of person who works, one prompt at a time. Remember, we have a prompt gallery, everybody, right? When we've worked through a prompt for a project that we're going to repeat again and again and again, we put it in our prompt gallery. We go out and get it. We use it for the project, right? We may want to do that step by step by step instead of feeding information into a more sophisticated chatbot or a custom GPT, where again, that process becomes invisible to you for a little while. There's a black box essentially that's doing all the things that you told it to do, but of course there can be mistakes. So that's one of the things that we can do. It's just an example of the people, process, culture. You can change your own process to allow yourself to be more accountable because you can see what's going on and you can fix it if you need to. Okay? Accountability. I am going to close on continuous learning because this, to me, is where we have the biggest gap in our industry. Which reminds me, if you're wondering what AI consultants do and AI upskillers and people basically who do what I do for a living, click on that or take a picture of that QR code, point your camera at that QR code. It'll take you to a deck that will just you could just flip through it and see what are some of the things that we offer when we're working with clients. Go ahead and what about, hi Davis, I'm so glad you're here. God, I have to send that thing to you. So Davis is asking me, what about ChatGPT team or enterprise? Is it safe to put PII or other sensitive information into those models? Okay, so here's the word on the street. The word on the street is, let me see here. I'm going to turn this off. Okay, so the word on the street is that these setups will not release your information out into the world. Now, here's where I would be a little bit nervous about it. If you're working on a donor strategy and you're using pseudonyms, like you guys know, I say Mickey, Minnie, and Disneyland. Like that's who we're talking about. We do not say Ann Murphy and Ann Murphy Enterprises. We do not say donor XYZ and organization ABC. We don't do that. Mickey, Minnie, Disneyland Enterprises, or whatever, Stimpy, Ren. I don't even know what those are. Whatever is going to make it easy for you to avoid using proper names, that's what I would go with. So if I'm working on a strategy or I'm working on a meeting follow-up, a contact report, an email, a to-do list, a briefing, a creative brief for an awards program, what else? You name it. And it's one person and I've used pseudonyms, totally good. Like I would not worry at all about using, because enterprise and teams are closed systems, right? And you're clicking, I think you still have to click a box though that says that you don't want your information to be used to train future models, or maybe it's built in. I'm not sure. We didn't go get teams because we didn't need it. Other, LLMs are doing the same thing. Microsoft Copilot, that's probably built into, if you guys use Microsoft, which you probably do, there's some more security there. But let me just say this. For me, I would never load a spreadsheet of donor information up into a large language model at this point. And that's just me, Ann Murphy, telling you that. Other people, like the vendors you work with, they're going to say different things. Like say you're already in your CRM, right? And you're using AI. Like Salesforce is very oriented towards safety and security of data. In fact, my friend Rachel Kimber is at the Salesforce World Summit right now, and she just posted a video on LinkedIn. Again, it's Rachel Kimber. She just posted a video on LinkedIn about their safety and security policies. So, and it's good. It's really good. So, yeah, that's where I stand on it, Davis. I'm still pretty conservative about it just because I've always been conservative about data and feeling like I don't want to be that fundraiser where, there you see like in the Chronicle of Philanthropy or the Chronicle of Higher Education, fundraiser or academic leader sends some information from point A to point B, and now all of a sudden it's out into the ether. I just am nervous about that. I always say I want to have a long and happy career in development. So the problem is, of course, that there's a lot to be gained by being able to upload PII into the models. So you're kind of balancing the benefit versus the risk. Does that answer the question? Does that help? I hope so. Okay. Are you guys on team? On ChatGPT team or enterprise? That's awesome. I want to know, like, are you guys using the thing where you can all be in one chat at the same time? We looked at that. Okay, so here's what we're going to talk about now. Continuous UOUS learning. Okay. So this is one of the tenets of fundraising AI's framework toward responsible AI in fundraising is continuous learning. And this is a question I get all the time. Where can I learn more? Where can I learn more? And when we were doing the talk yesterday, same thing came up. There's like 100 or 200 people on the call. And at the end of our session, they're saying, how can I learn more? Where can I learn to actually do this stuff? So we have like a big knowledge gap that we don't want that knowledge gap to get any bigger than it already is. Because here's the amazing thing about generative AI. Ooh, sorry. My computer is currently moving around every time I move my arms. We've got a whole new setup here, people, because I'm going to start making on-demand content, working with a couple of different organizations. At any rate, talking about continuous learning, and everybody always wants to know, where can I learn more? There are a few places where you can learn more. And I'll be honest, I'm just going to be honest. Like, I'm just going to be me. I'm just going to tell you the truth. I'm just going to say it. I don't know other actual fundraisers, actual people who have worked in fundraising for their careers, who are teaching how to actually use the tools. Now, my friend Rachel Kimber and I are launching a couple of different programs, but they won't be like hitting the big time until the fall. I'm continuing to do what I do, which is I do upskilling for clients who hire me. We have a whole upskilling. It's a six workshop arc. And I do one-off workshops. Like, for example, I'm here every Friday teaching people how to use AI tools. We also get hired to go into conferences and do like masterminds. So there may be like a leadership section of the conference. We may go in and work with the leadership folks to teach them how to use AI. I don't know a lot of other people who are fundraisers. I do know a few people who are, nonprofit, lifers who are now in the AI space who can definitely help. And they can probably even help with fundraising use cases. But when it comes to this, I just don't know anybody else who's doing it. So I would recommend a couple of different communities, because I believe that when it comes to learning with AI, community is actually important. Very, very important. There are 3 things that matter. Technical background is not one of them. You need to have a curious mind. You need to have a willingness to be vulnerable. Like, you're learning in public, right? You're failing in public. By the way, no one's an expert. There is no such thing as an expert. So that's a permission to be vulnerable, because everybody is vulnerable. Like, all of the people in my community of practice we have the worst imposter syndrome because there's nobody to benchmark against. We're vulnerable. We're out here talking about stuff all day, every day. And who knows, right? Oh, you're so welcome. You're so welcome, Davis. vulnerability. But the third piece is community. Because AI is such an existential, like, just doing such a number on us. Like, what is our self-identity, right? Like, if you've identified with a particular craft, like writing or artwork, for your whole entire, like, adult life, and now people are out here saying AI can do it better, like, that's really threatening. If you're wondering, like, trying to figure out fact from fiction, especially, as the election comes and the deep fakes and all that kind of stuff, like, that's super discombobulating. Having a community of people who are similarly interested in what you're doing, who are similarly interested in being, it's called the jagged frontier, being out here on the jagged frontier, other early adopters, other people who are willing to lead in this era rather than stand back and wait for things to happen to them, right? Wait for the world to just kind of like bring it to them on a silver platter. You need a community to do it. And I will take it one step further, which is I believe you need friendship. I believe that it's more even than community. It's that you need your AI besties. So I highly recommend that. We have a couple of different communities that we spend time in. One is the AI Salon, and that is founded by a woman named Leah and a guy named Kyle. Kyle Shannon he runs the AI Learning Lab, and he's on TikTok Live every single night for the last almost year, teaching all of us how to use this stuff. And it's entertaining, it's hilarious. He's a goofball, he's a trained actor. We have fun. Most recently, he's been building a Broadway musical using all the things, and we're having so much fun watching that. And of course, from those of us who are like, tippy tapping in the comments, we're like, do this, do that, make the song say this, make the song say that. It's hilarious and super fun. So Kyle Shannon, so he runs that TikTok Live, but he also hosts the AI Salon, which is a free community, very eclectic. Like, you're going to interact with creatives, business people, coders, developers, consultants, folks who are emerging as consultants, you name it. Like, it's a y'all come situation, little slice of humanity in there. Love the AI Salon. Lots of support in there. Lots of different, we call them guilds, lots of different guilds. Weekend GPT Jams is hosted there. So that's our place where we communicate about what's coming up next with Weekend GPT Jams. So if you're not in the AI Salon, I highly recommend heading over there, joining, and just scrolling down the left-hand thing, and you'll find Weekend GPT Jams. Just click on that. I think you have to ask to be in the group, and I have to approve you, but I mean, it's literally me pressing a button, and I would love to have any of you. Another community that I'm a really big fan of is the AI Exchange. The AI Exchange is run by Rachel Woods. Rachel is here on TikTok, as is Kyle. And she's awesome. Sorry, Rachel is here on LinkedIn, as is Kyle. And she's also on TikTok. A lot of us found her through TikTok. Her community is exceptional. You have the opportunity to interact with like global leaders in AI operations. And AI operations is essentially like what I do. It's AI consulting, it's, having frameworks, it's upskilling, it's, truly, like, we use the word transformational a lot in all different industries, but, we're talking about transformational partnerships with businesses and nonprofits, associations, et cetera. So there are a bunch of AI ops people in there from, like I said, just a breadth of industries. Every single day is a huge learning opportunity. And the AI Exchange hosts the Master Prompt program, which will teach you how to prompt like a pro. You will be able to get the world's greatest, truly the world's greatest output from the large language models when you know how to prompt in the way that Rachel and her team teach us. It's incredible. So it kind of stinks that you have to know how to prompt and that it just doesn't magically occur, because we would all love for this stuff to be magic, but it's not magic. You got to learn some things. You can get great results with just talking to the models, like natural language processing. That's what they're, like that's what they're really, really good at. But when you prompt in a more formal way, you're going to get better results. And by the way, at the link that Donnie dropped, and if you're here, if you're still on the call, here, you see it here. I'm going to put it right here. Look at that. So if you can find, I've got 2 videos on this link tree. One is about the core method that I created about, just how you approach working with the models. The other one is about structured prompts. And pretty soon I'm adding one that talks about how to fix AI writing. So what are all the things you need to do on the back end when you don't like the results that you get? So that'll be up there hopefully in the next week. I'm just kind of behind on content. So those are 2 communities. In summary, landing the plane, AI Salon and AI Exchange. And then, as I've mentioned, we have various, community oriented things that we do at AI Empowered Fundraising. But that's like the continuous learning thing. You just got to be in it to win it. And, those of you who are here listening right now, kudos. I commend you. You are among an elite group of people on this planet who are leading in the AI revolution. The work that you're doing now, the way that you're putting yourself out here, the way you're devoting time to learning this stuff is so incredibly important. We want you leading us there, right? We want you to not be on the sidelines. Bring your friends to get one of the things that we talk about in the AI Salon is learn, do, teach. Try to talk to one person every day about AI and bring them into a community, or teach them a little tip and trick, or just tell them about a breakthrough you had. Listen to them about their fears and concerns and be empathetic. That's part of the reason why AI is a women's game. It's because we can access empathy so easily. So that's what I wanted to share today about AI governance. Our guest will join us as soon as she's feeling better. We have Scott Rosencrans on next Thursday. He is one of the key players in fundraising AI and the framework for responsible AI in fundraising. So join us at 11 o'clock a.m. Pacific next Thursday. And then tomorrow, remember, we're doing event planning with AI. And the following week, what are we doing? I've got something really good the following week. Oh, I know what I'm doing. Favorite use cases, my absolute bangers, the very best use cases that we've come across so far, where we've gotten the biggest level up and where our clients are like, oh my God, I can't believe it. This worked so well. I am going to teach everybody that next week, next Friday. This Friday's event planning. Next Friday is best use cases. Check out all of our things that we have going on. We would love to welcome you to any of the things, any of the events that we have. Help yourself to our resources. There's much more to come. And have a beautiful day, everybody. And thank you for being here. Really appreciate you. Shout out to the folks on LinkedIn. Shout out to the folks on YouTube. Shout out to the replay folks. Don't hesitate to be in touch with me. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Connect with me on TikTok. Go head over to my YouTube channel, which I just realized these are streaming over there. We're in a lot of different places and we're happy to be here. But most of all, just be in touch with me one-on-one. I love to hear from you all. Okay? Have a beautiful day. And thank you all so very much for being here. Appreciate you.